you know the greatest crisis facing humanity today, even before the coronavirus pandemic, is climate change due to global warming? Do you know we are gradually losing our natural habitats? Our ocean ice are melting with sea level rising. We are losing our beaches, our islands are vanishing, while our low-lying coastal lands are flooded in others, making salt water to poison our crops and inundate these lands with rocks and debris. The world is facing a threat of food shortage. Rainfall is becoming abnormal and erratic in most places, while few places suffer severe droughts. Why? This is because the earth is becoming warmed continually than usual. According to the reports given by CNN,
but the biggest problem now facing the world is climate change. Greenland has impacts all around the planet. 1 billion tons of ice lost here raises sea levels all over the world. If we don't figure out how to do something about this, and pretty quickly, we're going to hit a catastrophic tipping point.
BBC also reported bushfire ravaging communities in Australia.
People don't really understand it until you actually see it coming at you in a wall of flame.
In September 3rd, 2019, Hurricane Dorian hit the Bahamas, causing a final death toll of about 70 persons. More than 250 persons were reportedly missing after the hurricane. About 76,000 persons were left homeless, according to the United Nations report. The total damage of infrastructure incurred was over $3.4 billion. Wow, that was so much money wasted. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, human activities have been fingered as a major cause of global warming. Global warming refers to an overall increase in temperature in Earth's atmosphere, land and oceans. The reason given for these changes in global temperature is an intensification of the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is a natural process that warms the Earth's surface. It's a process that occurs when gases in Earth's atmosphere trap the sun's heat. This process makes Earth much warmer than it would be without an atmosphere. The greenhouse effect is one of the things that makes Earth a comfortable place to live. When the sun's energy reaches the Earth's atmosphere, some of it is reflected back to space and the rest is absorbed and radiated by greenhouse gases. Later, the absorbed heat is released back into space as infrared radiation, thereby preventing the Earth from being overheated. But when air pollutants change the composition of the atmosphere, less heat escapes. This causes Earth's temperature to increase. The greenhouse gases include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas, water vapor, ozone, and some artificial chemicals such as chlorofluorocarbons, hydrofluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride. Carbon dioxide is the most abundant of the greenhouse gases and climate's worst enemy. It is released when oil, coal, and other fossil fuels are burned for energy. Transportation accounts for the largest source of carbon dioxide emissions, followed by electricity. The process is called greenhouse effect because the exchange of incoming and outgoing radiation that warms the planet works in a similar way to a greenhouse. Have you seen a greenhouse in a nursery? A glass-made structure, successful at growing plants year-round, even when it's cold outside for some plants to typically thrive. In a greenhouse, the sun's heat can come in but cannot go out. This trapped heat helps in controlled growth of plants. A car parked outside under the sun with all the windows closed presents a good analogy for the mechanism of greenhouse effect. The windows of the car are transparent to the sun's rays, which quickly warm the inside, but the hot air inside cannot escape. Neither can the heat, because heat is given off in the form of infrared rays, which are invisible to the eye but can be felt on the skin. The same glass that lets visible light in prevents much of the invisible infrared radiation from getting back out. So the temperature inside the car rises. This is because the solar energy that enters through the glass is in a short wavelength. The infrared radiation, which is the heat energy, is a long wavelength. The short wave solar radiation, which is the ultraviolet and visible light, is strong, and the long wave infrared radiation is weak because energy is inversely related to wavelength. Hence, infrared radiation has the inability to escape massively. The Earth's atmosphere is like the glass of that car or the glass house of a nursery. It easily lets in visible light but blocks much of the invisible radiation, including infrared, ultraviolet and X-rays. What is the essence of this blocking? When the atmosphere absorbs infrared radiation, it acts like a blanket around our planet. Though the sun warms the earth, without the greenhouse blanket, the heat will rapidly escape to the cold. Empty space that surrounds the earth and the surface temperature of the earth would be about 21 degrees Celsius, that is about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, colder than it is presently. All the oceans would freeze, and the layer of ice over the oceans would block most of the light in the surface. This would kill off marine algae, and the effects will ripple off the food chain. The fear about the greenhouse effect is that it will come too good with extreme effects if the mechanism is heightened through anthropogenic impetus. Anthropogenic activities are causing increase in the greenhouse mechanism in two ways. First, the insulating role of the greenhouse is increasing due to their increasing build-up in the atmosphere. Secondly, these gases are reacting with and depleting the ozone layer, which reduces the layer's shifting roles and increases the rate and passage of shortwave solar ultraviolet radiation to the earth, thereby increasing the incidence of ultraviolet radiation related diseases such as skin cancer, precancerous ailments, as well as untold damage to crops and other life forms. If the full amount of ultraviolet radiation falling on the stratosphere, that is the layer of the atmosphere bearing the ozone layer, reached the Earth's surface, it is doubtful that any life could survive. A world cap on carbon dioxide emissions should be placed by limiting the use of fossil fuels in industries and transportation. The loss of tropical forests should be stopped, while planting of trees over areas now suffering from deforestation should be encouraged. Energy conservation rules should be made much more stringent by tightening building codes to require more insulation. We should use energy efficient lighting if possible. The amount of fuels used in transportation should be reduced by raising milliard standards, encouraging carpooling, stimulating mass transit in urban areas, and imposing increasingly stiff carbon taxes on fuels. We should invest and deploy known renewable energy technologies such as wind power, solar collectors, hydrogen economy, voltaic cells, tidal power, geothermal energy, and so on. We should capture and separate carbon dioxide at the site of emission, store and convert it into liquid carbon dioxide, and pump it into deep oceans where the low temperature and high pressure would preserve it as a solid mass. Efforts should be made to slow the growth of human population, because a continually growing population will inevitably produce increasing amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. It's no longer a speculation that unless mankind acts now, global warming may cause a significant climate change with potential dire consequences for man and the environment. A big catastrophe awaits us all if we do nothing in the now to control the amount of greenhouse gas we emit. The future generations won't forgive us if we do nothing in the now. Let us work together to save our planet. Let us take responsibilities.